Hello, everyone. We're here today with Emma Wright, who is a body confidence coach. She is an author. She's also a speaker and a coach. So let's introduce Emma and have her take over now and tell you a little bit about what she does. Welcome, Emma.
Thank you so much for having me here. It's such a pleasure to be here and talking about this topic that's so close to my heart.
Indeed.
So I thought a really good place to start would be to kind of give you a little background as to why I do what I do, and why really do I have something to say about body confidence
Absolutely. That sounds
in,
perfect.
in general. And it really started when my first child was born, and I remember really clearly promising her that I wasn't going to let her feel about her body the way I had. I had a very unpleasant experience of my body most of my life, and I really, really didn't want that for my children. So I remember making that promise, and then I started to do all the things that we're taught to do about that. So I decided she was going to be fed really healthy food. I was going to really limit sugar and junk, and I was going to tell her she was gorgeous, and she was going to be slim, and she was going to be fit, and she was going to feel amazing about her body. And everyone would know that I had done a great job in that area. And as the years went by and she started to get her own opinions, and that job of doing the things that I thought you needed to do as a parent got harder and harder. So the idea that she would love healthy food was a great idea, but didn't pan out that way. And the dinner time started kind of disintegrating into battles of wills and fights. And when we went to birthday parties, she would, go crazy at the sweet table, and I felt ashamed and frustrated, actually. Like, why can't, I know all the things to do. I know it's important. Why is it going this way? And then the real moment came for me, I guess, when I caught her at home shoving sweets into her mouth, and sort of sneakily shoving sweets into her mouth in the kitchen. And
Right.
I walked in there, and she looked up at me with this look of fear and shame on her face. And it just sent ice down my veins, because I could see already, even at the very young age she still was, I think she was 6 or 7 at the time, I could see everything that I had felt about myself, the fear of food, the shame I felt, this unpleasantness, and I know these things are red flags for eating disorders in later life. And it just really stopped me, and I made a decision then and there to do something differently. But I had no idea what to do, because I was doing all the things, right?
Oh, yes.
I was really
you
can relate to that, right? We do all the things.
I've been at that pantry myself.
That's right. And so I went on this quest to think, well, if I'm doing all the things, are there other things to do? And do we know? As in, is there data? And I was kind of almost prepared to go out and study, like do a PhD, or, do something so that we could have some data to figure this thing out. And what I found was so incredible to me. It was really shocking that we have so much data already, like 80 years worth of information on this topic.
Wow.
Which was really surprising to me. But this information isn't kind of filtering down from lofty research land to like yourself and to me and to those who are listening, for all sorts of reasons. But the long and the short was I found two really, really surprising things. And one was that weight and health are not nearly as interlinked as we've been led to believe. So that causes, and that's causing all sorts of strange behaviors because we believe they're kind of almost interchangeable. And the second thing, we really do. And the second thing I discovered, which was such a game changer, was that psychological issues, if you like, around food, they're really not, they don't come from some kind of psychological weakness. They're not because we are weak as people and there's some kind of psychology we need to fix. They are a really natural response, actually, to certain environments. So getting a bit crazy around food and our bodies and the fear and the shame is created directly from this kind of health and well-being environment, largely, that we've created. So that's really good news because we can change our environment.
Yes.
So, like, wow, we don't have to try and fix our psychology somehow. We can make small changes that have massive impact. And when I started learning all these things and discovering new ways of behaving and new ways of speaking and new ways of doing food and all this kind of stuff, firstly, the first thing I noticed was my own relationship with my body and food changed dramatically. Like, I went from what I would say was kind of socially acceptable disordered eating,
Right.
so I still felt like my body was wrong, and I still felt like I had to manage my food quite a lot, and I still felt guilty about some behaviors and shame about others, and
yeah,
but we're so used to it. It's that's normal, like, that's not a problem, that's normal. That stuff started to disappear, and I was like, oh my goodness, this is outrageous that not everyone is this free, like it was. So there was that. And then my daughter came home from school one day, this is about a year or so down the line, and she said to me, oh Mum, there's this boy in my class and he's telling everyone how he hates his fat tummy. And
Oh,
and she said, Mum, I hope he knows that his body is amazing, because everyone's body is amazing. And it's
that's
like,
so lovely.
isn't it beautiful? And it made me realize I had made good on my promise.
Yeah.
Like, finally, in a way
It's
that I hadn't expected.
giving me chills, actually. That's just lovely. Beautiful.
Thank you. And it also made me realize I need to share this. I can't keep this to myself. It's really important that other people hear this story and get these tools. And so that's really why I'm here and why I have something to say about it. And since then, I now, so I speak at schools, and as you know, and I
Yes.
coach and all that.
And
kind
you have
of
a
stuff.
book, don't you? You've written a book on body confidence.
I've written a Raising Body Confident Kids, which goes through the 10 principles really that I've discovered in this journey that lead to body confidence and great resilience for our kids in all sorts of areas. It's kind of when we develop this body confidence, we become the unexpected benefits as we become a little bit resilient in other areas as well.
I can quite believe that. Yes, quite believe that. Okay, so if I had a child that was, say, came to me and said, oh Mum, I've been told by the kids at school that I have a fat tummy, how would you sort of approach that with that parent to help them, help their child? What would be the first thing that you would sit down with them if you had to say to give 3 steps or 4 steps as to how you would help them? What would that be?
Yeah. So the first thing, I do actually have a 5-step process, and I won't go through the whole thing here. It is in the book, and anyone who wants to come and talk to me personally about their personal circumstance, that's what I'm here for as well.
Great.
But what I generally do is I look at, like, the first thing we normally want to tell our kids when that happens to them, and it's been an unpleasant experience. Like, not like some kids, it's just like, well, being fat is the same as being tall. It's like, well, a kid told me I'm tall. It's like, tell me something I don't know, like.
Yeah.
And if we
Yeah.
can get our child into a scenario, if they are bigger, and someone says to them, calls them fat, like it's meant to be an insult, if our child can be like, and the sky is blue, like, tell me something I don't know.
Right.
The power in that is
Right.
tremendous. Like, when I say, we have resilience, it's like, we can't stop everyone overnight
No.
saying these things to our kids, but we can build this enormous resilience in them.
Yep.
So that's kind of the end game. But the place to start is, I always, what we want to say in our minds when our kids say things like that is, we want to assure them that they're not. We want to go, no, you're not. That kid was being ridiculous. Because what we do know is that kids feel fat and get called fat at all sizes.
Yeah.
So there's no size at which this starts. It's not like being skinny or being average size inoculates you against this. Happens right across the spectrum. And the first thing we want to usually do is say, no, you're not, for two reasons. A, if they're not, we kind of want to show them some reality, right? We kind of, and B, because we all know that living in a larger body in our culture is frowned upon, we want to protect our kids from the pain of that. And so, but telling them they're not does two things. Telling them they're not, first of all, says you don't believe them. You don't believe their feelings, which makes your child not want to say anything more to you. It sort of pulls them away from you rather than draws them closer to you. And the other thing that saying no, you're not does is it reassures them that being bigger is bad. And we don't want to do that. It shows that you have a fear, like, no, you're not. Like, that's a terrible thing for someone to say to you.
True.
So if we, instead of saying no, you're not, and we want to be in a place where our children will come closer to us, not push us away, and feel able to express things to us, if we want that, and we want them to know we love them regardless of what they look like, the place to start is to acknowledge their feeling. Even if they're the skinniest little marinky you've got, wiry little kid goes, I've been told I'm fat, or I feel fat, or I think I'm, whatever it is, and it's clearly an uncomfortable feeling. The very first place to go is, it really sucks to feel bad about yourself, doesn't it? And instantly you've acknowledged that they're feeling bad. And then there's a whole step, like, we could spend a couple of hours going through this process.
Yes, I'm sure you could. Yeah.
and then we go through and we, and I can, we go through that whole conversation and acknowledging that and figuring out what to say. And then we end with, some comebacks kids can have. And one of the most powerful things, your child can say to someone, if they say something like that, or anything actually, is, why would you say that to me? Rather than going into you can't say that, you're a bad person, you're like, get your child to be in charge of this conversation. Why would you say that to me? Like, you've got the problem, not me.
Yes.
So when we talk about resilience, that's a great thing to teach your child in any situation.
It's a life skill, isn't it? So
it's a life skill so that's an empowering, seeing, seeing mums and dads learn these skills with their kids, it's so beautiful, watching that connection grow, and getting rid of that sort of discomfort of, oh my goodness, what do I do with this conversation, which is where most of us go with this.
Yes,
And
exactly.
it's great, and it's one of the most common questions I get asked, actually, is
what do we say?
What do we say?
So you've been doing school talks, and you've also got a Facebook group, haven't you, that people can join currently? Tell us about that.
I do. I've got a Facebook group because it's so beautiful. So because one of the things I started to realize was that a lot of what we're talking about is talking about changing our culture. Like we have a culture that really stigmatizes bigness, and that kind of flows onto all of us feeling somehow like we're not good enough in all sorts of different ways. And I started to realize that even with all these tools and learning, and it's still really easy to be in the world where you're getting these messages coming at you consistently, telling us that we need to wait until our body is a certain way before we can feel better, that dieting is a good idea, that it leads to health, even though there's no data that shows that. All these things, these messages are constant. So I wanted to create this space where mums could come together and meet other mums who had kind of found out this information and wanted to change the future for themselves and for their kids and the way they feel about their bodies. And so I've started a little club. It's called, aspirationally, I should say, it's called the 10,000 Mothers Club.
Nice.
And it's called the 10,000 Mothers Club because in this Facebook group, I every day at 10, not every day, but for 5 days in a row, most days, it's the easiest way to explain it. Most days at 10, I run a guided walk for just 10, 15 minutes where we can all walk together and appreciate our bodies for what they give us, rather than be in the mindset of our bodies need fixing and changing and somehow expecting us to wait until they are to feel good.
Oh, that sounds great.
Oh, and when I was starting this, it was like I started with the idea that imagine if there were 10,000 of us with this living like this. Imagine if there were 10,000 voices in my community, not complimenting anyone on how on whether they've lost weight, and knowing how to talk to kids when they say these things, and having dinner times that were about conversation, not about getting broccoli into them, and wanting to create this different future. Imagine if there were 10,000 of us, our culture really would shift. That's what I kept thinking. And so I created this group. We're small now. I think there's about 100 of us at the moment and growing daily, but that's our aspiration. Yeah.
That's fantastic. I love the sound of that. That sounds amazing. Just having that time at the dinner table together where you're actually talking about real things and not focusing on, as you say, pushing the broccoli down their necks.
And fighting about who's had that bite and who's had this bite, and Oh,
the dinner table is sometimes the one place where you all come together once a day for the only time you come together sometimes as a family, so you want it to be peaceful, and that's something that I think would be most cherished by every family.
It's been such a game changer for us, and it's one of the things that I often work one-on-one with people, because it is nuanced, and it is about creating it for your particular circumstance, and it's such a gift to your kids.
Amazing.
To have this place they want to come to rather than feel like they're being policed.
That's right. Yeah. So with the dinner table, I've just got a random question. I'm just thinking, with the dinner table, do you find it's better to have everyone help themselves from one central meal sort of buffet? Is that how it works best, do you think, where people get to choose what they want to eat from a buffet style, or rather than dish up everybody's plates? How does that fit into it?
I want to. I yes, and I also want to, sort of disclaimer before I answer. Well, not disclaimer, but I also want to say we also don't want to get into this is the way to do it. Like if you already plate up and you've, and your dinner table is fine, don't switch just because you feel like, oh my goodness, that's the way it's done. So, however, if there is struggles and there is unpleasantness, one of the things that I've adopted and also shows it has fabulous results in the studies they've done is to do what you've done, like have a buffet each day. And the reason it is such a game changer for families is it puts the kids in a position of power for themselves, and it also demonstrates to them that you trust them. Like it's up to you. I've made the food. It's up to you to choose whether you eat it or not and how much of it you eat. And trust is something that kids really need for themselves. Like to learn how to trust their own appetite when they're a child it goes on to such fantastic health results for life, as opposed to learning to distrust as a child, which it's not impossible, but it takes a lot of unlearning to trust,
Absolutely.
Once we get into that mindset of fearing our appetite and fearing and feeling like shame and guilt around what we like and what we don't like, and so learning that and exploring it for yourself as a child is with your parents' blessing, creates a lot of harmony at the table. And it also takes such a lot of pressure off mum. It's like, at the end of the day, we cannot force our kids to eat.
No.
And we want them to eat the same whether we're in the room or not.
Yes.
And so give them the opportunity to find out what makes them feel good and what makes them not feel good, rather than creating food like this thing that they can then go and sneak when mum isn't watching.
Yes. I had a niece who used to do that. She would sneak sweets because she wasn't allowed to have them, so she would sneak them. She's perfectly fine with. She doesn't have a body confidence issue, but I do remember as a child she used to sneak sweets, and it was it was interesting. Whereas my daughter never did. Probably she never really had a great sweet tooth as a child, but we just sort of made it there. We didn't make it that she wasn't allowed to have sweets. I think that's the other thing. We can we can be quite harmful in the way that we raise our kids if we say to them, I believe you can't have that. That's an absolute no. You can't have that piece of chocolate or that whatever it is. Would you agree with that?
It really, that kind of policing unfortunately really backfires, and it comes from and I know why we do it, because I got into a lot of that, and I know why we do it but a lot of it is based on these kind of short-term focus as opposed to long-term focus. The short term of that's really bad for you, so don't eat it, and we've got to kind of control that, and we're fearful of that, as opposed to the long term, which is trusting our kids will have experiences that make them feel bad, and they'll learn from them, which might
Exactly.
include, I ate too much chocolate and now I feel really ill.
I think that's exactly what happened to her, actually. She had some sort of red lollies that she'd been hoarding, and she ate so many that she threw up, and
and then that's a great learning experience.
It
right?
was.
Yeah,
definitely. She's a very healthy eater now.
Well, there you go. And also, like, there's a lot of evidence to show us in long-term studies, actually, that kids who are forced to eat vegetables when they don't like them, or because there's some kind of idea that you have to eat a lot of vegetables, actually eat less vegetables as adults than kids who might not eat many vegetables on their own steam as kids, but there's no pressure.
No.
Because they come to it in their own time.
That's right, yeah.
And so there's a lot of studies that if you actually want your kids to be really good vegetable eaters, back off.
Good advice, I would say, yes. Because some people just don't like Brussels sprouts, for example. I mean, it's an acquired taste, isn't it?
And also, there's lots of things that can happen. Like our kids have very different palates to adults. And some kids, the palate is not too intense. Other kids have this really, really intense palate, and so these strong flavors are quite unpleasant, and then they go through puberty and hormones change and their tastes change, and
that's right, yes,
it all just so playing a long game. And this whole the whole there's lots of I was reading a really sad study the other day about kids as young as 5, like in the States they call it kindergarten, stealing food from other kids' lunch boxes has become a bit of a thing in some areas, because their access to certain foods is so limited at home. And they see these bright colors and sweet stuff, and it's overpowering, it's overwhelming to them to want to try it and want to test it out. And I know, and I have so much compassion for parents who put those limits on. I really get it, because there's so much information out there telling us to do that. That's what you do.
Yes,
and unfortunately, the whole on flow of that and the kind of the unintended long-term consequences are not being, not being discussed at the same time. Yeah,
absolutely. So if somebody watching would like to join your Facebook group, where do they go to find you, and what's the process? Is there a charge to join, or what do they do?
There is. So to find me, super easy. Just go to my website, www.emmawright.co.nz. We'll have you'll be able to find the links to that super easily. And in there, you'll find a link to the 10,000 Mothers Club. At the time of this recording, it is actually free, and it's going to be for another little while, but there will be a kind of a admin cost. It's really, I'm going to keep it as minimal as possible. It's going to be a pay what you can service.
Oh, lovely.
That will come in soon. A monthly pay what you can, no long-term joining fee, just to make it really, I've just pulled my headphones out, make it really accessible. But all the information is there on my website, so really easy to find.
So it's www.emmawright.co.nz.
Yes.
And they can join the 10,000 Mothers Facebook group to be part of that community where you all support each other in helping raise body confident children.
They can indeed. They can come join the walks, and there's also going to be free access to free training as well, videos and units and stuff like that. So,
that sounds amazing, Emma. So thank you so much for taking the time to share what you do with us. So we will say goodbye now and leave people to go and look up your website and join your wonderful Facebook group.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Oh, you're very welcome. Bye for now.
Bye.
Bye.